her body started shaking. Not like a shiver, not like she was cold. Violent, sudden, wrong. You ever see something happen and your brain just refuses to process it for a second? Like it lags behind reality? That was me. Her eyes rolled back. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I remember the exact way her small hands curled in toward her chest, the way her knees buckled, the sound her head made when it hit the carpet. A dull, sickening thud that didn't belong in a normal night. And then, "Stop doing that!" That's what my dad said. Not panicked, not confused, annoyed. I turned to him so fast it made my neck hurt. He didn't even look at her. Not really. His eyes flicked over for half a second before going right back to the TV. Like this was nothing. Like she was interrupting something more important. Then he reached down, picked up the remote, and turned the volume up. Louder. Like he was trying to drown her out. I just stood there. For 1 second. And I swear to you, in that 1 second, 100 thoughts hit me all at once. Is she choking? Is this a seizure? Why isn't he moving? Why isn't anyone helping? And then the scariest thought of all. What if I'm the only one who thinks this is serious? Because that's what growing up with my dad does to you. It makes you question your instincts. It makes you hesitate. It makes you wonder if you're overreacting, even when something is clearly, obviously wrong. But then Lily's body jerked again. Harder. Her breathing, it wasn't right. It sounded uneven, like her body didn't know how to do it anymore. That hesitation? Gone. I dropped to my knees so fast it burned. "Lily, baby, hey, hey, hey!" No response. Her eyes didn't focus. They couldn't. I looked up at my dad again. "Dad, something's wrong!" He sighed. Actually sighed. Like I'd just asked him to get up and grab me a glass of water. "She's fine, Emily. She just wants attention." Attention. You ever hear something so insane your brain doesn't even know how to react? "She's not. Look at her!" He didn't. Didn't even turn his head this time. Instead, he leaned back into the couch, crossed one leg over the other, and said, "You're making it worse. Ignore her." Ignore her. My 6-year-old daughter was on the floor, shaking, unresponsive, and he wanted me to ignore her? I felt something snap. Not loud, not dramatic, just clean, like a wire breaking. I didn't argue again, didn't try to convince him, didn't wait. I just moved. I scooped Lily into my arms, her body still twitching, her head lolling against my shoulder, and ran. No shoes, no jacket, nothing. The front door slammed open so hard it hit the wall. Cold air hit my skin, but I barely felt it. All I could hear was my own breathing and that horrible, uneven sound coming from her. I fumbled with my phone, nearly dropping it. 911, what's your emergency? My daughter, she's shaking, she won't respond. I don't know what's happening. My voice didn't sound like mine. Behind me? The house was still glowing, the TV still flickering through the window, still loud, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just collapsed in the middle of the living room, like I hadn't just run out barefoot, holding my child like she might disappear if I loosened my grip. And in that moment, standing under the porch light, shaking just as much as she was, I realized something that felt heavier than fear. He wasn't surprised. He wasn't confused. He wasn't even concerned. He acted like he'd seen this before. The sirens were getting closer now. Fast. Too fast. And as I held Lily tighter, whispering her name over and over like it could pull her back, one question kept looping in my head. Why did my dad act like this wasn't the first time? But the worst part, deep down, I think I already knew something was wrong. Have you ever ignored a gut feeling? Not because you didn't care, but because someone kept telling you it was nothing? That's where this really starts. Not on the night she hit the floor. Not when I ran barefoot into the street. No, it started days earlier, in moments that didn't seem big enough to panic over, but didn't feel right either. At first, it was small. So small, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. Lily would just pause. We'd be in the middle of something, coloring, talking, even laughing, and suddenly she'd go still. Her eyes would drift slightly, like she was looking through me instead of at me. "Lily?" I'd say. And just like that, she'd snap back. "Sorry, Mommy." Sorry? For what? She never knew. The first time it happened, I brushed it off. Kids zone out. It's normal, right? But then it happened again. And again. Each time, just a few seconds longer. Each time, just a little harder to ignore. Until one night, I saw something that made my stomach drop. Her hand twitched. Just once. Sharp. Quick. Uncontrolled. "Did you feel that?" I asked her. She looked confused. "Feel what?" That's when I brought it up to my dad. And that was my first mistake. He didn't even let me finish explaining. "She's tired." That was it. No questions, no concern, just dismissal. "I don't think it's just that," I said carefully. He gave me that look. You know the one? The one that says you're being dramatic without actually saying the words. "You've always overreacted, Emily." Always. Just like that, I felt it again, that creeping doubt. The same feeling I had growing up. Every time I got hurt, every time I was scared, every time something felt wrong. It was always minimized, always explained away. And somehow, I started doing it to myself. Even now. But Lily, she wasn't me. So I pushed again. "I think I should take her to a doctor." That's when his tone changed. Subtle, but sharper. "For what? So they can tell you she's fine and send you a bill?" "She's been having these episodes. They're not episodes," he cut in. "She wants attention." There it was again. Attention. Like that explained everything. Like that made it harmless. And the way he said it wasn't just dismissive, it was irritated. Like her behavior was inconvenient. Like it annoyed him. That should have been my second warning. But I stayed. Because I told myself it was temporary. Because money was tight. Because starting over somewhere else felt impossible at the time. So instead, I watched. Closer. And the more I watched, the more things didn't add up. He never looked directly at her during those moments. Ever notice that? When something is truly new, people stare. They react. But him? He avoided it. Like he didn't want to acknowledge it. Like if he didn't look, it wasn't real. One evening, I saw it happen again. Lily froze mid-sentence. Her fingers tightened around her crayon. A slight tremor. And before I could even say anything, my dad reached for the remote and turned the TV up. Not dramatically, not obviously, just enough to fill the silence, to cover it. That's when something cold settled in my chest. Because that wasn't confusion. That was pattern. That was habit. And then there was the neighbor, Mrs. Keene. She'd lived next door for as long as I could remember, quiet, observant, the kind of person who notices things without making a scene. A few days before everything happened, she stopped me outside. "Emily," she said gently, "is your daughter okay?" I blinked. "Yeah, why?" She hesitated, and that hesitation, it stuck with me. "I thought I heard something the other night," she said. "Like a fall, and some yelling?" My stomach tightened. "Oh, she's fine," I said quickly. Too quickly. "Just kid stuff." Mrs. Keene didn't look convinced, but she nodded anyway, and I walked away. I told myself it was nothing, that I would have noticed if something serious was happening, that I wouldn't let something like that go unnoticed. Right? But now I couldn't stop replaying it. The pauses, the twitching, the way my dad reacted, or didn't. And one memory hit me harder than the rest. 3 nights before the big seizure, Lily had dropped her cup at dinner. Her whole body jerked, just for a second. Milk spilled everywhere. I rushed toward her. "Are you okay?" But before she could answer, my dad snapped. "That's enough." Not concerned, not startled, angry. "She needs to stop this behavior." Behavior. That word again. I remember looking at Lily, really looking, and for just a second, she looked scared. Not confused, not guilty. Scared. Like she didn't understand what was happening to her own body. And that was the moment, the exact moment. I should have trusted myself. I should have picked her up. I should have walked out that night. But I didn't. And now, standing outside in the cold, holding her as sirens screamed closer, that realization hit harder than anything else. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't random. This had been building. And I had let it. And the thought that followed? It was the one I couldn't shake. How long had this really been happening? When I wasn't looking. At the hospital, everything changed in less than 10 minutes. You think you're prepared for emergencies. You're not. Not when it's your child. Not when everything moves too fast and too slow at the same time. The ambulance ride? I barely remember it. Just flashes, bright lights, a paramedic, Jason, calm voice, steady hands. "Stay with me, Lily. You're okay. You're okay." Okay. That word felt fragile. Temporary. I kept nodding like I believed him, but inside, I didn't. I couldn't. By the time we got to the hospital, everything shifted. No hesitation, no waiting room. The second they saw her, they moved. Fast. Doctors, nurses, controlled urgency, machines I didn't recognize, words I didn't fully understand. But one thing became clear immediately. This wasn't being treated like nothing. This wasn't attention-seeking. This was serious. A doctor turned to me, mid-motion, focused but direct. "How long has she been having seizures?" Seizures. The word hit like a drop. Heavy. Final. I hesitated. And that hesitation? It changed everything. Because I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did. I just didn't want to say it out loud. "I don't know," I said finally. But that wasn't entirely true. The doctor didn't react emotionally, didn't judge, just nodded, already processing. "Has she had episodes like this before?" Again, that question. Clear. Simple. And suddenly, All those moments came rushing back. The pauses, the twitching, the dropped cup, the look on her face. I swallowed. Maybe, I said. Maybe. God, I hated that word. The doctor exchanged a quick glance with a nurse. Not dramatic, but noticeable. Like something had just shifted behind the scenes. Okay, he said. We're going to run tests. Stay right here. And just like that, they were gone, taking her with them. I stood there, empty arms, cold hands, trying to catch up to a reality that was moving too fast for me to process. Minutes passed, or maybe longer. Time didn't feel real anymore. And then, the guilt started creeping in. Not loud, not overwhelming at first, just quiet, persistent. You saw the signs. You hesitated. You stayed. I shook my head, like I could physically push the thoughts away. I got her help, I whispered to myself. I got her here. But even as I said it, it didn't feel like enough. Then a nurse approached me, gentle, careful. Emily? I looked up immediately. Is she okay? She's stable right now, she said. The doctors are still evaluating, but she's in good hands. Stable. Another fragile word. I nodded quickly. Thank you. She hesitated, just slightly, and I noticed, because by now, I was noticing everything. There are just a few questions we need to ask, she continued. Questions. Of course. That made sense. It was routine, right? Standard. But something about her tone. It wasn't casual. Okay, I said. She glanced down at her clipboard. Was anyone else present when the episode started? Yes, my dad. And what was his response? I blinked. Simple question, simple answer. But suddenly, it didn't feel simple at all. He didn't think it was serious, I said carefully. The nurse's pen paused, just for a second, then continued. And how long after the episode began did you call emergency services? I opened my mouth and stopped. Because I didn't know how to measure that moment. Was it seconds? Was it longer? Was it too long? I'm not sure, I said. And there it was again, that shift, subtle but real. The nurse nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. But her expression had changed. Not judgmental, not harsh, just more alert. Like she was seeing something I wasn't fully seeing yet. Or maybe something I was trying not to. She stepped away, and that's when I noticed someone else watching me. A woman, standing near the corner of the hallway. Not in scrubs, not medical staff. Observing. Calm. Still. And when our eyes met, she walked over. Measured steps. Professional. Hi, she said, offering a small, polite smile. Emily? My stomach dropped. Yes? She extended her hand slightly. Hi, I'm Danielle. I'm with Child Services. Child Services. The words didn't register right away. Not fully. Like they needed a second to land. I just need to ask you a few questions about what happened tonight. A few questions. That's all she said. But the way the air shifted around me, the way my chest tightened, the way every decision I made over the past week suddenly felt like it was under a microscope, that wasn't just a few questions. That was something else. Something bigger. And standing there in that sterile hallway with my daughter behind closed doors and a stranger now stepping into my life, One thought hit me harder than anything so far. What if getting her help wasn't the end of this? 3 days later, I heard the knock. Not loud, not aggressive, just firm, controlled. The kind of knock that already knows you're home. I froze. You ever get that feeling where your body reacts before your mind catches up? That was me, standing in the middle of my tiny hospital room, staring at the door like it might disappear if I didn't move. Lily was asleep behind me. Finally. Peaceful for the first time in days. No twitching, no sudden movements, just slow, steady breathing. Machines still monitored her, but quieter now, less urgent. The doctors had a word for it. Epilepsy. A diagnosis. An answer. But not a simple one. Because with that answer came another truth, one I couldn't stop replaying. This hadn't started that night. It hadn't even started that week. It had been happening, building, and somehow slipping through the cracks. The knock came again, slightly louder this time. I swallowed, forcing myself to move. Each step toward the door felt heavier than it should have. Because I already knew. This wasn't a nurse. This wasn't a doctor. And when I opened it, there she was. Danielle. Same calm expression, same measured posture. But she wasn't alone this time. Another man stood beside her, clipboard in hand, neutral face, official in a way that made everything feel more real. "Hi, Emily," Danielle said gently. "Do you have a moment?" A moment. Like this was casual. Like this wasn't the moment my entire situation might shift again. I glanced back at Lily, still asleep, still safe. Then I stepped out into the hallway and quietly pulled the door closed behind me. "Is something wrong?" I asked. Danielle tilted her head slightly. "Not wrong," she said carefully. "We just need to follow up on a few things." Follow up. Another soft phrase that didn't match the weight behind it. The man beside her nodded slightly, but didn't speak. Danielle continued. "We've been reviewing the events from the night your daughter was admitted." My chest tightened. "Okay." "And we've also spoken with a few individuals connected to the situation." Individuals. Plural. That word hit harder than I expected. "Who?" I asked. Danielle didn't hesitate. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Keene." My stomach dropped instantly. Of course she had. "What did she say?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Danielle glanced briefly at her notes. She reported hearing a loud noise consistent with a fall, followed by raised voices. Raised voices. That tracked. But hearing it said out loud, documented, it made everything feel different. "Heavy," I said quickly. "It was chaotic. I was trying to help my daughter, and you did call emergency services," Danielle said, nodding. "That's been confirmed." A small breath escaped my chest. But it didn't last, because she wasn't done. "We also attempted to speak with your father." There it was. The shift. I felt it before she even continued. "And?" I asked. Danielle's expression didn't change, but her tone did, slightly more serious. "His account of the situation differs from yours." Of course it does. I almost laughed, but nothing about this was funny. "What did he say?" I asked. Danielle held my gaze. "He stated that your daughter was having a tantrum, that there was no medical emergency." There it was again. That word. Tantrum. Like everything that happened could be reduced to behavior. Like it wasn't real. Like she wasn't. I clenched my jaw. That's not what happened, I said, sharper this time. Danielle nodded once. We understand that there are conflicting perspectives. Conflicting perspectives. That phrase felt too clean for what this actually was. He turned the TV up, I said suddenly. Both of them paused. He what? The man beside her asked, speaking for the first time. He turned the TV up, I repeated, while she was on the floor. He didn't help. He didn't even get up. Silence. Not long, but long enough to matter. Danielle wrote something down, carefully, deliberately. And prior to this incident, she continued, had your daughter exhibited similar symptoms? There it was again. That question. The one I couldn't outrun. This time, I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said. My voice didn't shake, not this time. Yes, she had. Danielle looked up at me, and for the first time, something in her expression shifted. Not suspicion, not judgment, something closer to understanding. Thank you for being honest, she said quietly. But the weight of that honesty? It settled deep. Because now everything was out in the open. No more maybe. No more I'm not sure. Just facts. Real ones. And real facts come with real consequences. Danielle closed her folder slowly. We're going to continue our review, she said. But there's something important we need to discuss regarding your father's involvement. My chest tightened again. Not from fear this time. From something sharper, more focused. What kind of involvement? I asked. She met my eyes directly, clear, steady. The appropriateness of his response, and what that means moving forward. Moving forward. That phrase lingered. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about what happened. It was about what happens next. And standing there, in that quiet hospital hallway, with everything finally being examined under a light that couldn't be turned off, one realization settled in fully. This wasn't just a family issue anymore. This was something official, documented, permanent. And whatever came next was going to change everything. Here's the part no one tells you. The moment everything is finally acknowledged, that's not the end. That's where the consequences begin. And in my case, they came fast. Within 24 hours of that conversation, everything became clear in a way it hadn't before. Not emotionally, not instinctively, but officially. Documented. Explained. The doctors confirmed it first. Lily hadn't just had one seizure. She'd likely been having multiple smaller seizures over the past week. The pauses, the staring, the hand twitching, all of it. They even had a term for it. Absence seizures, possibly escalating into something more severe. And the worst part? Those early signs? They were the warning system. The chance to catch it early. The chance to manage it before it became dangerous. The doctor didn't sugarcoat it. If she had been evaluated sooner, he said carefully, we might have prevented the escalation. Not guaranteed, but possible. And that word, possible, stayed with me. Because it meant something simple and heavy at the same time. This didn't come out of nowhere. It was missed, ignored, minimized, and not just once, repeatedly. Then came Danielle's follow-up. She sat with me in a small, quiet room. No distractions this time. No soft phrasing to ease into it. Just clarity. We've completed our preliminary assessment, she said. My hands were cold. "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means," she continued, "based on medical reports, witness statements, and your account, your daughter's condition showed observable symptoms prior to the emergency." I nodded slowly. "And your response that night," she added, "was appropriate. You sought immediate medical care." A breath I didn't realize I was holding, released. But she didn't stop there. "However, your father's response is a concern." Concern. Again, clean word, heavy meaning. "He failed to recognize or respond to a medical emergency," she said. "And based on the pattern described, this wasn't an isolated incident." There it was, the full picture. No more fragments, no more doubt. Just the truth, laid out plainly. Lily had been showing symptoms. I hesitated, but ultimately acted. And my father? He ignored it, repeatedly. I didn't cry right away. Not in that room, not in front of Danielle. I just nodded, answered questions, signed a few things, stayed composed. But later, when I was alone with Lily, that's when it hit. She was sitting up in bed, quieter than usual, a small hospital bracelet still wrapped around her wrist. "Mom?" she said softly. I looked at her, really looked this time. Not distracted, not second-guessing, present. "Yeah, baby? Did I do something bad?" That question. It broke something open instantly, because even after everything, even after her body betrayed her in ways she couldn't control, she thought it was her fault. I moved to her bed so fast it startled her. "No," I said, my voice cracking. "No, you didn't do anything wrong." "Grandpa said I need to stop doing that," she whispered. That was it. That was the moment everything inside me snapped into place. Not panic, not fear. Clarity. Sharp. Final. I pulled her into my arms carefully. "You don't have to listen to that anymore," I said quietly. And for the first time since all of this started, I wasn't questioning myself. Not even a little. Things didn't explode dramatically. There were no arrests, no shouting confrontations. That's not how this kind of situation works most of the time. It was quieter than that, but no less permanent. For my dad, Richard, he was formally documented for medical neglect concerns, not criminally charged, but flagged in official records, advised against being a primary caregiver for Lily. When he tried to call me, I didn't answer. He left messages, voicemails filled with the same tone I'd heard my whole life. Dismissive. Defensive. "She's fine. You're blowing this out of proportion. You always do this." I listened to one. Just one. Then I blocked his number. Not out of anger, out of certainty. For me, the investigation concluded in my favor. Danielle made it clear. You acted when it mattered most. I was given resources, medical support, parenting support, housing assistance options. And for the first time in a long time, I accepted help. For Lily, official diagnosis, epilepsy. Treatment plans started immediately. Medication monitoring, regular neurologist visits. Doctors were optimistic. With proper care, she can live a full, normal life. That word again. Normal. But this time, it didn't feel fragile. It felt possible. And Mrs. Keene? She saw me a week later. Didn't say, "I told you so." Didn't ask invasive questions. She just placed a hand on my arm and said, "I'm glad you listened." And this time, So was I. We didn't go back. Not for clothes, not for closure, not for anything. Everything we needed, we rebuilt. Slowly, piece by piece. A small apartment, nothing fancy, but quiet, safe, predictable. No tension humming under the surface, no second-guessing every instinct. Now, mornings are different. I watch Lily more closely, but not fearfully. Carefully, confidently. She sits at the kitchen table most days, coloring, humming to herself like nothing ever happened. And sometimes, she looks up at me. "Mom?" "Yeah?" "Are we staying here?" Simple question. Big meaning. And now, my answer never changes. "Yeah," I tell her. "We're staying." No hesitation, no doubt. No one in the background telling me I'm wrong. And at night, when everything is quiet, I think about that moment again. The 1 second I hesitated. And the 1 second that followed it. The one where I chose to move. To trust myself. To act. That second, it changed everything. Not just because it got her help, but because it made something finally clear. I don't need permission to recognize when something is wrong. And I don't need anyone else to validate it. Because now, she's safe. And this time, I know I am too.